Hello and welcome to Elena Meets the Author. This podcast explores how authors create a world that we can escape into. Join me as we demystify the magic that keeps us turning the page. Hi, Elinor. Nice to have you on the show. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Just to let listeners hear a bit about you, Elinor is a prolific novelist. Her latest book, Every Tom, Dick, and Harry, is a humorous story about a woman named Emma Lewis, who, stalled in her career at 32, reluctantly takes over her parents' struggling estate sale business. No sooner do Emma's parents leave town to enjoy their retirement than Emma lands the company's biggest get, an impressive mansion on the exclusive Quail Ridge Road. Only this mansion has a less than exclusive past. A bed and breakfast for male guests that was more bed than breakfast. Another promising fancy house Emma takes on has a similarly checkered past. Should Emma let prudish principles get in the way of making money? Falling for the town's chief of police only complicates matters. Expect an active plotline, some unusual and timely deaths, lots of romance, and some good luck for those that had given up on it. Elinor, you are now the author of 17 books. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry came out 2 years after Misdemeanor, which I also interviewed you about a year ago.
Yes.
For all those listeners who may suffer from writer's block, where do you get your delightful madcap ideas from? And specifically, where did you get the idea for Every Tom, Dick, and Harry?
Oh, as far as in general, where I get my ideas, they don't just I don't get a full-blown idea ever. I don't get a plot. I just look for, maybe if I'm lucky, an opening line. And then I think, I follow the advice of an old writing teacher of mine, an adult ed course I took when I was 28. Prepare to write badly. So I just think of a sentence. Maybe that'll lead to the next thing. Maybe it'll inspire me. A character pops in. So, it's not good advice for someone, that's such a sort of seat of the pants approach. But what I've done with this one, with Emma taking the reins of her parents' estate sale business, I go to estate sales, and there had just been a few things. The last estate sale I went to, I got a few things that made me feel like I had a little bit of a link with the owner. One of them, from some of the things I got, I knew she was Jewish, and I also really liked, I got a plate, I got some serving bowls, and they were things I use more than usual. So every time I used them, I would think, estate sale business, that could be a good novel. Usually, I write something and then I throw it away, and not the whole thing. Maybe the first chapter. I've thrown away as much as 125 pages.
Wow.
Yeah.
In this book or in previous books?
No. Let me see what I did with this one, if I can remember what I threw away, if anything. With this, I had to reorganize, and I'm constantly polishing. So I managed to get my way into the book. And then that it opens with sort of a list of things that are always left behind in a house. And things like the electric typewriters and the empty mayonnaise jars and things that toilet seat covers, embroidered ones. No.
Oh, God.
Knitted ones. No, shag ones. So, that when I go over everything and polish it till I feel I can move on. So I know this is not a guidebook to anyone thinking, how do I get an idea for a novel? But it's more just sit down and don't be put off by the fact that you feel uninspired, that you just maybe have the glimmer of an idea or an opening line.
Yeah.
Start with an opening line.
I like that. And I like the idea that you don't mind if what you first write isn't good. Mm-hmm, it's okay.
Mm-hmm. It's okay. Yes.
Don't be so hard on yourself.
Right.
I'm trying to think of what is your opening line? Because, I was going to ask you to read.
Sure.
So do you have your book?
My book and my glasses, yes. So I'll read from the beginning.
Perfect.
Okay. My new business card reads, "A state of mind." And below, in italics, "We empty your nest." Though I've been working alone since my parents retired, I've retained the "we" for sentimental reasons and to sound less like the one-woman operation I hope to keep afloat. I've been estate sale adjacent since I could add and give change, spending weekends at a table, wrapping and bagging purchases. If buyers tried to negotiate, I'd point to the stated price on the tag or sticker and ask blankly, "You not want it?" But the grown-up me has learned to be kinder and more psychiatric. I know when to handhold and when to hard sell. Some clients can tell a story about every item in their house if I let them, and sometimes I do. If anyone is convinced that the unsigned portrait over the fireplace is an old master, I don't argue. I let the small local auction house with which I have a relationship, I recommend them, they recommend me, be the bad guy. As ever, they agree that the work in question is either NSV, no sale value, or TFO, the frame only. Yes, I can get $100 for a decent still life by an unknown artist, but it's small comfort to the surviving children who grew up expecting that their inherited treasures would be auctioned off for millions.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite sentimental going to these estate sales, and you are sort of connected to the previous owner. I can see that. Are you visiting estate sales when you were doing when the idea started percolating in the Hudson?
Yes, actually. Yes. And I believe that the one that really sort of still lives with me was in Pauling, to be specific.
Oh, Pauling, New York.
Yes.
And why is that one the one that still lives with you?
Those are the ones where there's a beautiful plate that I use, every third day when we're up there with, put the hors d'oeuvres on there, and soup bowls that I use. And there's a mug that is from the Forward, which is the Jewish newspaper. And so half of it is in English and half of it is in Hebrew. Not that I know how to read Hebrew. But, I just felt a connection, and I forget what else I got there. But those are the ones I use all the time.
It's funny because when you touch things and you use them, it does jog your memory. I have wedding plates from my first marriage that we still use now in my second marriage. And both husbands have the same last name, first initial, M. So yes. I just always see, when I see the M, I think, how convenient.
Yeah. Kind of love
it
that.
Worked.
Yeah, I kind of love that.
Yeah. Exactly. It's kind of funny. So I wanted to ask you about your title, Every Tom, Dick, and Harry. What does that mean to you, and how does it reflect the novel's themes?
It was an actual line of dialogue in the book where the woman she's actually the madam, but she says that it's just an escort service. And yes, the girls live in, but she's the house mother. So she was explaining that she can tell when people men call up to make a reservation, that she can tell what they ask. She can tell if they're asking about the bed and breakfast, because they might ask about, sort of handicap access or quibble about rates. And then she says, because it's not as if I want every Tom, Dick, and Harry. So at that moment, I said, ooh, Every Tom, Dick, and Harry, that could be the title. And I tried it out on my most trusted advisors, and then my agent and my editor, and everybody loved it. And the thing that I really like about it is when people ask me, what's the name of your new book? And I say, Every Tom, Dick, and Harry, they laugh.
Yeah, no, it's a good title. And I remember seeing it. I think I only saw it once. Is that right, in the book?
Exactly, once. Yeah. So it doesn't so much apply, but if you hold the book up for a sec so that
I love the cover.
Luckily, I have something called cover consultation, And there was a first attempt at a cover that I thought, did AI do this? I mean, it's like, it's horrible. And then I said, well, what about a line of men and leading up to a house that's kind of a fancy house, a Georgian, Victorian, whatever you want to make it. And I was picturing, I named a particular style of art that would be a little bit abstract. Well, they didn't do that. And there was a line of men. And some of them in a first draft of the men looked a little schlumpy and they looked young and wearing shorts. And I said, no, these are guys coming to a brothel.
These look smart. They're tailored, they're proper men.
And we gave one of them a briefcase.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah. It was good. I just wanted to ask you about drawing on personal experiences for this book, because I know when we spoke before and you've written about it, about how you lost your husband, your first husband 16 years ago, and then you found love later. And you wrote about it in that piece that I love in the New York Times Modern Love column. It's a great story.
Jonathan. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it was great. But did you draw on this experience of finding love later from your own experience? Because that appears a few times in this book.
It does. It does. And I don't think I drew on How I Met Jonathan or anything like that for her, sort of retired math teacher, boarder, now, congenial housemate, her father's best friend when they moved away. And I think it was just characters pop up. Luke, the chief of police, drops in on official business because she'd kind of thrown a bottle of crappy wine unopened into a little, what does she call it? When she makes little clusters of things like wine glasses, cordial glasses, an apron, a pot holder, throwing a bottle of wine. So Luke comes by to say, you're not supposed to do that. You need a license. You can't sell liquor. So Luke appears, and I think, Luke, he could be somebody here. And then I gave Luke a mother. So it's all step by step. So to get back to your question, it was more almost sort of real life, but not mine situation of small town. He is a retired math teacher. Luke had been a student of his. He knew all of the Winooski boys. So their mother was a parent of all these students, and now she's widowed. So anyway, it was like an easy fix-up for me.
Yeah, a double fix-up.
Yeah. On both sides. It was, because I love Frank. I didn't know Frank when I introduced him, and then I just became, he's such a sweet man.
He is.
And of course, the one thing that's very autobiographical, though, and now I'm just thinking of this, is that my son and daughter-in-law adopted a rescue dog who's 5/8 pit bull, my favorite kind of dog now. And so I had, Frank confesses that, a lifelong dream was to have a dog, and would that be okay? And it's a rescue dog who's half pit bull.
Ivy.
Yeah.
Love that name. And very sweet dog. And you and Ivy features a lot. Yes, because she lives in the house and they love Ivy and they take turns walking her. And it turns out that Emma always wanted a dog too, but I don't know, her parents didn't get around to it. I was just thinking, I was about to ask you whether in writing this, you encountered any challenges or surprises. And it sounds like some of these surprises could be just Chief Winooski and that relationship.
Yes. I had to, and this is sort of, really kind of, I don't know if an author necessarily wants to admit this, but, when I turn in my first draft to my editor, I think it's the final draft. I think it's like every word's been polished. Yeah. And she had some very, very good suggestions. This is my third book with her. And one of them was that I, miss happy ending here, that I made the road to, happy ending for reveal Luke and Emma a little smooth, a little too smooth. So I added some hurdles. And I even invented on the second draft, I put them on the 15th high school reunion committee together, where, she was sort of thinking he had a girlfriend and was, resisting. And so, I made it not the smoothest road that I would be inclined to do usually.
Exactly. Yeah. And there was a brief moment where there was that other woman who was sort of flirting with him, but she didn't stand a chance. The daughter of the house mother. Isn't that right? Was it Lois's? No, I get confused.
Vanessa. Yeah. No. Vanessa didn't flirt. Who flirted? I forget too.
Somebody flirted in a nightshirt, in a very small, wasn't wearing, scantily clad, and invited him to the funeral.
Oh, thank you. Oh my God. Yes. A minor character. Frank has 2 stepdaughters, and it was one of the stepdaughters. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. She's a little fast, that one. Yeah.
She's definitely a little fast.
And people still say fast. I don't know.
Oh, I do. But no, you're right.
Right.
I don't think they do. But I think
inclined.
Yeah. I saw in your acknowledgments that you thanked your police chief friend, someone that you've known since 4th grade.
Jimmy Mulligan, bless his heart. Yes.
I love it. And I was just wondering, he gave you some good narrative advice on being a cop. I was wondering if you can tell us any of his more, juicier tips that was like, oh.
Well, when I remember the longest conversation we had was, what I do is sometimes I'll send him an email and say what a police officer, because he was a police officer and a chief and a superintendent, and he went to the FBI Academy and all this other stuff. And I remember even something like, okay, the cop is at the end of the street and he's not letting people go down there because there's been, possible tragedy taking place. Okay, when's he going to let the people through? When's anyone being able to get to the house? When will Emma be able, who's a member of the family, get through? And then at the house for another house for an altercation, he gave me specific advice about nobody's going to press charges and, as opposed to me just kind of letting it all go by without, So whenever there's a policeman and Luke is on the scene, Jimmy Mulligan has approved the dialogue.
And did you stay in touch with him since the 4th grade?
I can tell you exactly how this evolved. Let me do the math here. 67, 68, 78. No, I think it was my 20th high school reunion. I saw Jimmy at the event and he told me what he was doing. And I think he'd known because the Lowell Sun, we grew up in Lowell, Massachusetts, the Lowell Sun would, nicely write up about me. And so we talked. And he gave me his card and he said, if you ever have a question about a cop, well, I certainly did. And the cops show up in all my novels, and in one called The Dearly Departed, which is the first one I consulted. And of course, he doesn't go by Jimmy anymore, but Jim. That was the first one I consulted him about. And the cop was the only cop in the town of, I think it was called King George, New Hampshire. So by being the only cop, he happened to be the chief of police.
Right.
And all kinds of advice about, even if you're wearing a bulletproof vest and you're shot at, you still would suffer bruises, even though and put him in the hospital. Okay. So all kinds of advice. We went all through the Morey School, which was 4th, 5th, and 6th, and then Daly Junior High School, and then Lowell High School.
It's funny because in your acknowledgments, you also thank, Facebook friends, someone who had experience in estate sales, and then a neighbor who gave you some good tips. And it strikes me as you have all these kind of nuggets that are in your world, and you just need to be open to them. You don't have to look too far. You just have to be open. It's a thought.
Thank you. I think that's very true. And I think I remember once being at a reading I did together with Anita Shreve, who was a really close friend of mine. She died in 2018. And, I just miss her terribly. But we did an event together, and someone was asking about research. And, her books take place here, there, and everywhere. And I remember Anita saying that she does research on a need-to-know basis. So I, too, don't set out and, first of all, I don't know what, get in my car and go to 20 estate sales and take notes. So it is like what I glean looking back at things I've noticed. And, the other thing that was hugely helpful in this, besides Jim Mulligan, is the aforementioned Jonathan, my beau partner, because he is in the art world, as he is an appraiser for an auction house that I don't name because, he's very discreet. So he's the one that sort of leads me to these estate sales. And also, I can consult him about, that's where I laughed out loud when he said TFO, the frame only, that would be a price judged.
Because it's what's inside is worth nothing. It's just the frame.
Yes, exactly. Rubbish. He's British. Rubbish.
Yeah.
So then, so very helpful in terms of what would be on the wall at this, fancy B&B / brothel. And, artwork. And so very specific details. And of course, and I don't like to give it away, but the ending has a lot to do with art and, art. And in the acknowledgments, I was 3/4 of the way through the book and needed an ending. And Jonathan and I were in Liverpool, and he looks out the window and he remembers back when he was in Liverpool working for a museum and a project he was working on and about a piece of art that was found there. And so I'm not going to say any more than that.
Yeah.
I said, thank you. Here's my ending. Yeah. Okay.
That's perfect. And I remember you had the auction business in Misdemeanor, the book, your last book.
I sure did. Yeah. My character.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Oh yeah. Oh, big time. And we joke about how much I've monetized him because I've the Modern Love piece and I've had about 5 or 6, and I'm working on another piece right now for the Free Press that Jonathan enters into that because it's about widowhood.
Oh.
So enter Jonathan.
Didn't you also had a collection of essays?
Yes.
That you gave to him. Go ahead. What's it called?
It's called I Can't Complain.
And then one of the essays was about him before you started going out.
Well, it was when we were seeing each other as friends, his choice, not mine. And I called what we had going on a no-man's because it was. And then suddenly, after not seeing each other for about 6 months, he was back in touch. And then things kind of escalated. And then my collection came out. And the essay called A Fine No Man's was about meeting him and, sort of nothing happened. And I pretended in that essay that was about right for me, like I was a widow and that was like all I needed was this friendship. And he read that and said he wanted to talk to me. And we were already, seeing each other still in a kind of platonic fashion, but I was picking up a few new vibes. And he said he wanted to talk to me. And he came over and I had wine and smoked salmon ready. But it happened to be, talking about a distracting day, the day that this really wonderful review appeared in the New York Times of both books that were brought out simultaneously.
Wow.
The View from Penthouse B and the essay collection. So he comes over at, 6, and I was getting phone calls And I talked to my son, and I was, getting emails. And what he wanted to tell me was that he didn't want to be just friends anymore.
He was just taking his time. Maybe he was just being British. I don't know.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. No, yeah. He was just that was a lot, and very much him. Now that I know him so well, very much him. But that was 12 years ago. Of that, I don't want to be just friends anymore. Yeah.
Oh my God. But yeah, so that's. I'm so glad it worked, and I'm so glad he's a font of material for you.
Yeah, he is. That is the perfect. I'm gonna. Yeah. A font of material is right, and he's such a good sport. He's such a good sport about it, and I don't even have to ask anymore. When I in the essay I'm writing now, I just mentioned that he was a Brit, because I'm sort of talking about how I have 3 grandsons, and the major push is, that's fun, but let's play soccer. Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing, back to your book, I notice in both Misdemeanor and in Every Tom, Dick, and Harry, you have small settings. So like one is a building, basically in New York City, and then this one is obviously a small town. Do you prefer limiting your settings to just sort of a one place where everybody knows each other or they're somehow connected? And also, just a side question, is the town, this fictitious town, Harrow in Massachusetts, is it based on Lowell, Massachusetts, where you grew up?
No, it's actually so sort of blatantly Northampton, Massachusetts, because I mention what happened was with my second novel called The Way Men Act, it's set in Harrow, Massachusetts. And then again in Misdemeanor, her parents live in Harrow. So I thought, why not? So the reason it's so obviously Northampton is because it's a college town. And I'm not shy about mentioning all of this, Hatfield and Amherst and Agawam and Springfield and Holyoke. So, everyone would know that it's Northampton.
Okay.
And, why, of course, I'm not going to call it Northampton and put a brothel there.
But do you prefer in your novels to have it in a sort of a small setting where people, like a small town kind of setting, even in Manhattan, because it was in a building?
Yes, I would say so. And one of my, I was recently asked, what are your goals for the next book? And I began by saying, my goal, I'm always trying to get my characters outside. I have a T-shirt that says indoorsy. So I am, could they go someplace? I remember in my very first novel, it said Then She Found Me, which was made into a movie, the only one of mine that was made into a movie.
With Helen Hunt, you had quite a cast. Colin Firth.
Yeah.
Right?
And Matthew
it was a cast.
Broderick.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Bette Midler. Bette Midler played the mother.
Right.
Yeah. But I remember with that I put and then she found me in the novel, I put my characters in a car from Eastern Massachusetts, and I sent them out to the Shaker Village all the way at that, for like an outing, the other side of the state, of the Commonwealth. And I was so proud of myself. So yeah, I have to push myself.
That's funny because Misdemeanor, they're under house arrest. So they are the ultimate. To be inside. Yeah.
That's right.
The ultimate. So are you saying because you're happier when everyone's inside, it's easier for you to write when they're in?
You know what it is? It's further than that even. I have to push myself to not have every conversation taking place at the table. So it's not only indoors, but because the dialogue is the easiest thing for me. So where does dialogue take place? I don't have them on adjoining treadmills at the gym. I have them sitting down. Yeah, eating,
which is probably maybe personally where you're happiest.
Yeah.
Now you probably get this question all the time, but what advice would you give aspiring comedic writers? I do remember you telling me that for you never really think of yourself as being funny, but other people think you're funny. So it might be hard to give advice when you don't even know.
It is. Yeah, I don't like books that are allegedly funny, and I can see that the author's straining to sort of tell jokes and be funny. Because when I do a reading and I discover what people find funny and what they're laughing at, they're just my sort of point of view. It's just my way of looking at things. So people laugh at a sentence, a word sometimes, and I think, well, I didn't know that. But of course, at the next reading or event, if people don't laugh at that same line, I'm disappointed. But so I would say, if I find myself reaching to say something funny for a line, I cut that line out.
Oh.
So it is hard to give that advice. I think with me, it's just, it was a discovery that the way I look at things might make people laugh, find funny. So fine, I welcome that. Good for me.
Good for you.
Not going to complain about that.
So it's kind of, maybe you're either a funny person or you're not. If it's forced, it'll come off as forced.
Yeah, I think it might be, and I haven't put these two things together, but that when I watch a stand-up comic, I like the ones that are just talking about their life, and their observations are just observations, but they're funny to other people, and it's their wry way of viewing things. And I don't like comics who laugh at themselves, laugh at their own jokes. I like a straight face, and they just, sort of describe something that they experienced, something that they viewed such and such a way. Yeah. And it's funny. And this is the first time ever I've thought of that, an analogy. So thank you. I might be able to use that out in the world.
Good. Well, I guess my almost last question is, what next? I'm sure you have something cooking for your 18th novel.
It's actually, it's the 18th book, and it'll be my 16th novel. Actually, and, I haven't been saying this much, but, I think by the time we're talking publicly here, this book will be out.
Yes.
Anyway, so what I'm working on is a sequel to The Inn at Lake Divine.
That was definitely autobiographical.
It was autobiographical in the sense that my family got a letter from what turned out to be a restricted hotel, meaning Jews weren't allowed. So that was my launch pad, that starting point. And that's the book that most people, when I meet people and they assume it was my first novel, it's usually the book that my readers have. Maybe it's a favorite book, or certainly the first book they've read by me, even though it was the fourth novel. So best known book, I would say.
So it's a sequel to that.
A sequel to that.
Interesting. Can you tell us what time period it takes place in?
That's a good question. It actually starts right where it left off. So it's in the 70s, which, there's no cell phones, no iPhones, there's, phone booths. And so that takes some, certainly recollecting, but also some research. And, but Natalie, the narrator, was my age. She was sort of born when I was born, and got that letter when I was, my family got that letter before the Civil Rights Act of 1964, when Natalie was 10 or 11, as I was. So I'm back there, and now it opens up with what is the 10th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act of 1974, because the Inn is contacted by the Boston Globe that's doing a sort of roundup.
So I didn't read that book yet, or haven't read it yet. Does Natalie end up not going to the hotel because?
Natalie
in the first book.
In the first book, she gets to go there as a teen because her bunkmate at camp never stops talking about this wonderful inn at Lake Divine, the name of the hotel where her family's been going her whole life. So Natalie kind of ingratiates herself. And this little girl, Robin, only has brothers. And she says, wouldn't it be wonderful? Maybe you could come with us. Maybe you could go with us. And she does.
Okay, I see. And experiences whatever she's going to experience.
Yeah, yeah.
And
by that point, the law has passed, but she picks up vibes,
Ooh, okay.
Like, ham served, she feels like at every meal. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Oh, sounds very interesting. I want to read both. Definitely. Okay. And knowing you, that'll take you about a year because you're so quick.
Oh, I'm not that far. I'm about 100 pages into it. I think it's due in about a year. So maybe it's under contract already.
And do you have to do a lot of added research for this one?
Well, you know me in research.
Yeah.
I need to know basics. Yeah. So, I'm Googling things like it's a made up town in Vermont called Gilbert, but I know that area well. My parents, in fact, made it up there to a non-restricted place that we're, and so, I know it well enough. So I would say the main research I'm doing is a priest shows up in the novel. Yeah. So I'm reading a book called Vows about a priest who's in his life. And I haven't decided what's happening to my priest yet, but as soon as I thought of that, it was like, yes, bringing a priest in.
So you're quite decisive when you're writing. And I just had a question about your schedule. So do you pretty much, regardless if you have an idea, do you say, I'm going to sit down at my computer such and such a time, 5 days a week or more, I don't know. And you just, even if you don't have an idea, you just force it, or how does it work? Because you've written so many books and quite consistently, through the years.
Well, I like to write in the morning, and that, of course, had to do with first when my son was in nursery school and then school. And my husband went off to work at 6:30 in the morning. He was a doctor. That was very convenient, out the door at 6:30.
Yeah.
And so I aim for 500 words a day, 5 days a week. But if the 500 words come quickly because it's a lot of dialogue, I say, okay, it's only 9 in the morning or 9:30 or 10. So you get a whole day ahead, and that's disgraceful. And why don't you keep going? So then 750 sounds good. And then I think, well, as long as I'm 750, do 1,000.
Great.
But definitely push myself if I just think, I don't know what's next, but I'm just going to give it a try and write something. And then maybe I throw that away, but it leads to an idea. And, I'm quite religious about, if I'm just, not me driving, but let's say Jonathan and I in the car and he's driving, and I get an idea for the book, then I'll borrow the pen and the notebook that's sitting there near the gear shift and write it down. And that's where I got the idea of driving, is at the passenger seat, for Good Riddance.
Oh.
In the car. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I pay attention to those little glimmer, and he's used to it. It's just like, ooh, wait a minute. And I will write down. And it might be just the tiniest thing that one of the characters I'm working on is doing tomorrow.
Right. Perfect. Yeah, you notice it. You're open. You're open to story, plot, all the time. And, it sounds like you push yourself, but even if it doesn't work, you don't mind because I'm just going to stick with it.
I would say that Tim O'Brien, who wrote, was it Going After Cacciato? do I have the wrong names? Anyway, Tim O'Brien anyway. And I once, he said something about knowing your own process. And I know that if I am feeling that I hate this, I don't know how to write anymore, this is rubbish, but I know I get to fix it. And I know that I fix it so I'm happy with it and my editor's happy and even the readers are happy with it. So I have faith in my process that I know this doesn't feel like anything. I hate this chapter, but I finish a chapter and then I cut that and I put it in its own document and then I work on it and work on it and work on it till I think it's good enough to send it to my first editor, who happily turned out to be the fabulous biographer, Pulitzer Prize winning biographer, Stacy Schiff. So
oh, wow.
I send her my chapters. I read hers too, vice versa. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And then my last question is, what books are you excited to read?
I'm reading a book right now by a British author, and it's called Eddie Winston is Looking for Love. And
it's a good title.
Marianne Cronin. And what else?
And you're liking it.
Oh, yes. Oh, and one of the things I love about it is Eddie Winston, who's 94, who's never been kissed, he works in a charity shop. So it's stuff too. It's sort of like one side of the secondhand stuff. So it's lovely. It's a really smart writer. So, and I'm also I'm reading Emma, because I'm writing, Simon & Schuster is doing an anthology where each story is going to be about a minor character in any Jane Austen novel. And I've chosen Miss Bates from Emma. So I'm rereading Emma and watching every Emma, movie and TV program.
And then are you going to be writing about Miss Bates or no?
I am going to be writing about Miss Bates.
Oh, you are? Oh,
yes,
great.
I am. Yes. And it's due March 1st. So I'm going to be writing that soon. Yeah. Yeah.
You are busy. It's impressive. It's great.
Thank you.
Well, that's all my questions. I was really lovely talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And good luck. I hope you all enjoyed listening to my chat with the beloved and prolific Elinor Lipman. I loved hearing how a story can begin in her head with just an opening line. Elinor's not afraid of making mistakes because she knows she can just polish later. Elinor tries to write 500 words a day, 5 days a week, but she's always open to ideas, just the glimmer of an idea. And when she hears that idea, when it comes to her head, she immediately always writes it down. And of course, I loved hearing Elinor talk about her personal love story with a British man named Jonathan. She wrote about their courtship in one of my favorite modern love columns. It was a story called A Fine Nomance. I highly recommend you read it, as well as reading Every Tom, Dick, and Harry, a light, funny read that will take your mind off of more serious topics. You can listen to this episode of Elena Meets the Author wherever you listen to podcasts. And please subscribe. See you in 2 weeks.